Going online without ExpressVPN is like not paying attention to the safety demonstration on a flight. Most of the time, you'll probably be fine. But what if one day that weird yellow mask drops down from overhead and you have no idea what to do? Nicole, Robbie, and I, we travel a lot, and we still watch those videos all the time just to give us a reminder in real time. Every time you connect to an unencrypted network in cafes, hotels, airports, your online data is not secure. Any hacker on the same network can gain access and steal your personal data, passwords, bank logins, credit card details, etc. It doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack someone. Just some cheap hardware is needed. A smart 12-year-old can do it. Your data is valuable. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling personal info on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. It's super secure. It would take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to get past ExpressVPN's encryption. It's easy to use. You just fire up the app on your laptop, your phone, your tablet, and click one button, and you're protected. It even works on your Chromecast. Rated #1 by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. So, as I said, Nicole, Robbie, and I all travel a lot, but we also have to regularly log in to the media sites for automakers to download embargoed press information about cars before it's meant to be out there in the public. And because we're on the road a lot, we may have to log in and check on our credit card accounts, our bank accounts, or even just if we're out of the country and we want to watch something on Netflix or Hulu that we can't get overseas that may only be available here in the U.S., or vice versa if you wanted to see something, if we wanted to watch something that's not available here in the U.S. ExpressVPN allows you to do that. I've been personally using ExpressVPN, paying for it myself for several years. It's a great VPN. It works really well. I've never noticed a slowdown in speed while using ExpressVPN. It's reliable. And it's so simple to use. So secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. And you get an extra 3 months when you sign up, all for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. And we want to thank ExpressVPN for supporting the Wheel Bearings podcast. Coming up on episode 355 of Wheel Bearings, we got the 2025 Ram 1500, the Porsche Cayenne GTS, the Buick Envista, the Lexus LFR, the Chevy 4.5-liter Duramax V8 that never made it to production. Fisker finally files for bankruptcy. Casey's engine goes boom. Rivian R1 updates and more coming up next. This is episode 355 of Wheel Bearings. I am Sam Abul-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Nicole Wakelam from CarBuzz.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
And Nicole, what have you been driving?
I drove two things that couldn't be further apart in terms of performance. Do we want to start with low performance or high performance? Which one first, guys?
I'm looking at the rundown. They both look like, four-door, crossover.
Totally comparable vehicles. Okay, let's start with
the same.
The low power one. So I have the 2024 Buick Envista Avenir, which is the fancy trim. So the Envista's new this year. It's I'd say a compact crossover or a compact SUV. Not super expensive in the grand scheme. So it's $28,600 in the Avenir trim, which is the most expensive one. Destination, guys, what do you think?
Oh, $1,200. Oh,
you can't both say 12. Okay. Sam said it first.
I said it first.
Before you.
$1,400.
Sam wins $1,095.
Oh,
I should have got down.
Yeah, you just talked faster.
If you had done $11.99, you would have beat me.
You would have won. So $28,600 is the most expensive version of this that you can get. It's not a super expensive vehicle, and even though it's a Buick, which is like a more premium vehicle, the least expensive version of this you can get into for $23,495. So it's pretty cheap. And it doesn't look cheap on the outside. It doesn't look like a down market car or anything. It actually looks kind of slick. I think it looks very sporty. It's really cute. But on the inside, that's where you kind of feel it. I was in the Avenir, which is the top trim of this. And there's a lot of plastics. You know, it has that sort of, so that's where you think, okay, this isn't exactly the fanciest car that I've ever been in. It's not unattractive or like
$28,000.
exactly. That's the thing. It's $28,000. So for a $28,000 car, you look at it and you think this is not bad. It was very comfortable. I found the seats very comfortable. It has, 3 people in the back, two people in the back. You don't want to put 3 people back there.
3, like let's say you're friends with models or toddlers.
Right. Models are no, toddlers would be worse because they would like, don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me.
Well, plus you got to use the car seats.
And I feel like
and those are actually wider.
Would be like
about car seats.
Like you'd have to spring them in. Like when I used to put 3 car seats in the back of some cars, and we'd have friends when our kids were little, you just put the middle seat in first, and then you'd have to pull it all to one side to get the right hand seat, and sort of push it all to one side to get the left hand seat, and sort of like spring it together, like spring. Okay, now they're all wedged in there. Nothing's getting out. It was like an effort to get 3 car seats in a lot of little like small SUVs like this.
But a couple of 3 tweens you could fit in there.
You could fit 3 tweens in there as well. Tweens and models. That's all you can carry in the back.
What is a tween? Is a tween like 11?
It's like
11, 12.
12. Okay. I don't know. I kind of call like 13. I know you're technically a teenager, but you're those like really early teens and not
middle schoolers.
Middle school kids. That's what they are. Middle school kids. You're right.
Extras in the wonder years.
Extras in the wonder.
There you go.
So this is front wheel drive only. That's one of the things that could be a deal breaker for a lot of people. If you want all wheel drive, can't have it. Get another car. And it has a 6-speed automatic with a 1.2 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder. Not a lot. 137 horsepower, 162 pound-feet of torque. Again, not a lot. And if you look at this just exclusively by the numbers, it seems like it's underpowered and horrible, and it's going to be this miserable car to drive. Those are really small numbers. But surprisingly, it is a decent engine. You're not going to win a race in this. It's not something for people who want really strong performance, but it is more than adequate. Like it does fine when you're accelerating up to highway speeds. It gets up there just fine. And it's not even super noisy doing it, which I feel like is like saying something. Because a lot of times when you have an underpowered engine and you mash that gas, it sounds like the engine's just going to explode right up from underneath the hood. You're like, oh gosh, I've done too much. It's going to
It's just yelling at you.
And you're like, this sounds
you bought the wrong car for this.
Exactly. This is not what I was designed for. But this one sort of says, well, this is not what I was designed for, but okay, fine. I'll deliver when you smash the gas to get on the highway. So I enjoyed driving this. I thought it was a nice little car. It's very comfortable. It's, like I said, quiet even when you're mashing the pedal, and it's just quiet on the road. I didn't find it very noisy, not a lot of wind noise, not a lot of road noise. So it delivers that sort of comfort that I think is more of a priority than performance in a car like in a Buick. You want it to be comfortable. You want it to be quiet. I enjoyed driving this. The only thing I didn't enjoy, there was a giant spider in my car, like the giantest spider I've ever seen, to the point that I told Russ to smash it with a shoe. And I'm like, if you don't smash this spider with a shoe, I'm not getting back in this car. Biggest spider I've ever seen in New Hampshire. It was scary. I debated if it actually came with the car from wherever the car was before. I was like, those memes where they show like, you couldn't find the spider, you burned down the house. I'm like, I wonder how Buick would feel if I just burned the car down, because I can't drive it like this.
we're pretty pro spider here. So there's spiders everywhere around my house, like all the time, everywhere. We're always picking them up, taking them out.
I've never taken a dinner invitation from you ever, unless that dinner is out.
It's like a giant cobweb. We're like the Addams family.
The spider was so big, it was fuzzy. We don't have fuzzy spiders in New Hampshire.
It might have been someone's pet.
I don't think so.
Like, has anyone seen my spider? Oh my God, was it in that Buick? I'm like, I'm sure it'll be fine. Then you get it back.
If your spider was in that Buick, then forget it, because your spider is now mashed all over the floor of that Buick. Although I made Russ clean it up. I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't even clean it up. I'm like, you get rid of the spider guts that are everywhere.
Maybe he didn't. Maybe he befriended it and set it free.
What's that? I should have said it.
Befriended it. No, maybe he befriended it and sent it free. No,
because I didn't trust him like a good wife, and I made sure that I viewed the spider remains before he cleaned them out of the car to know he really got the spider, and it wasn't somehow still roaming around the car to surprise me later. It's dead. Oh. It was gone. But aside from the spider interaction that scared the bejesus out of me, I really enjoy driving this car. I think it's, and I love the style of this, like that sort of slopey kind of sporty little front. It's a nice looking car. And Russ said to me when he saw it on the driveway, "Hey, we have a bear." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And I expected to see an actual bear, but he thinks the new Buick Tri-Shield logo looks like claws, like someone. So it makes him think of a bear claw. So he calls it a bear. I'm like, that's probably the most aggressive name this Buick Envista will get from any person ever.
But the bar.
Yeah, so I like it. And, it has a decent little amount of cargo room. It has, good infotainment. I love that the storage for it. So especially in small vehicles like this, you have like cup holders sometimes and a spot that's maybe big enough for your key up front. So if you have anything else in your hands, your sunglasses, a wallet or whatever, even sometimes the center console won't hold it. Not only does center console completely hold my wallet, I also could just shove it like in the little storage area. So I appreciate there's a surprising amount of little cubby storage in this for a car that's so small. So I am pro Envista. I really like it. I think it's people are picking on it because it doesn't have a giant engine, but that's not why you buy this. It's not why you buy it. Don't buy this car if that's what your priority is. That's not your priority if you're buying this.
Not everyone's. I think a lot of automotive journalists have. It doesn't go very fast. I'm like, okay, first of all, most people aren't going don't need to go that fast. What are you doing?
How fast do you actually need to go?
If you work at Road and Track, totally. That's your jam. But if you work at like regular cars.com and you're angry because the car doesn't do 0 to 60 in another 5 seconds, you need to chill out.
Right? And realistically, like how many, like we're a bunch of journalists, we're into cars. We look at things like 0 to 60 time and horsepower and the kind of engine and blah, blah, blah. Most people have no idea how fast their car actually goes. Like, do you think the average Joe knows what the 0 to 60 time is?
They just want to get on the freeway.
Right.
Exactly. Is it fast enough to merge with freeway traffic? The Envista absolutely is.
Exactly. That's what you need. You need to not feel like when you hit that gas pedal that you can't get the reaction you want to merge into traffic, or to, if you have to do a quick maneuver because something's gone wrong, there's something in the road, I got to steer around. You need it to be able to do that. If it does that, then it has all the power and handling that you really need. That's what most people look at.
I mean, I was at Rivian a couple of days ago. They were doing a local briefing here at their tech center in Plymouth, Michigan, on the updated R1. And also they showed us that we got to see the R2 and the R3 and the R3X. And, they were talking about the powertrain updates. And I brought, why do we need a pickup truck or an SUV with 1,025 horsepower? Who needs this vehicle? Who needs this truck that can go 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds? This is ridiculous. The base 2 motor with 530 some horsepower, even with the standard LFP battery, still goes 0 to 60 in like 4.5 seconds. That is more than fast enough for anybody.
I wonder if it's like, and I know that like the crazy horsepower on these EVs, but like, is everybody who's buying an EV, like, I get it if you're listing horsepower numbers, you're super focused on making them stupid on something like a Mustang because you're buying a Mustang because you want a sporty little car, right? Or like a Corvette or something. But are that many people buying an EV because of the performance? I don't know that they are. Like, is it because it's green? Is it because it's the future? Is it because you just want an EV? Or is it like, I want all the horsepower? I wonder how many that is like their priority. I'm buying an EV because I want to go fast.
Those launch modes they're essentially like parlor tricks. You do it once or twice on your own. You're like,
you show it off to a couple of friends.
You show it off to your friends.
And you never use it again.
No.
Exactly. You never, ever use it again.
Like,
You're just like, first I got to find the middle of nowhere every time I want to do it. If you're like a good person.
Yes, you're not just doing this.
You have to go out to the middle of nowhere. You have to convince your friends to sit in the car and do this thing. And some of my friends, when I've done it, they're like, don't do that again. They are not happy.
Right? Well, like, what's it? Watts to Freedom, the WTF, which is the cutest name of all of them on the Hummer. I appreciate that they came up with that. I can see engineers like, how can we say WTF but not have it mean what it means?
Watts
you got Watts for America. You got this. And it's super fun. Like, it's a fun thing, but it is a gimmick, and you have to be on a closed area, like an empty parking lot or something where you can do it and you're not going to come across anybody. So it's fun, but that's not your daily driving.
Yeah, it's a lot of money
experience.
It's a lot of money for a goofy feature that, again, you're never going to use, and you're potentially going to put yourself and other people's lives in danger if you do use it irresponsibly.
Yeah, if you're using it irresponsibly,
I've been on the freeway. I see how you people drive.
But going back to the Envista, besides that engine, the other nice thing about the powertrain, it's It's a 6-speed automatic. It's not a CVT.
Right.
So it's actually a lot more pleasant to drive.
Which I think adds because, the CVTs is, especially when they're in like sort of like underpowered cars, they're not fun. They're like, and that probably is part of why it doesn't sound so loud, because you don't have a CVT that's just like screaming. You have a 6-speed automatic transmission that's doing.
And 3-cylinder engines make a nice little growl. They have a nice little growl to them.
It sounds
that I really like.
Yeah, I'm really the first time I drove this, I thought I really like this. I remember commenting on it and people like, that stupid tiny little engine. I'm like, dude, have you driven it? No. Have you even? Would you know?
It's not that heavy. It's only 3,000 pounds.
Exactly. It's small. It's not like they put this into something the size of a, Ford Explorer or something. This is a small vehicle. So not having as much power as some of the big SUVs is okay, because this isn't that big. It's smaller. I think it's a great car for somebody who wants a little bit of, the versatility and sort of uprightness that you get in a crossover, but doesn't want to go with something really big. Still wants it to be attractive. It looks good. It has nice features, and it stays in your budget without you looking like you went with a budget car really well. I like how it does that. So
it doesn't look cheap.
No, it really doesn't. It doesn't look luxury. Like the inside does not scream luxury. Like some of the Avenir trims are fancier. You know what I mean? But this is an Avenir on a very base vehicle to begin with. It still looks good. So I was a fan of this. I like the Invista. I've liked it every time I've driven. I'm like, I like this little car.
Invista. Like it has a little song for it now.
Needs a song? Is that what we need? A little Invista song?
Just be sure to get one without the spider option.
Right. Don't get the spider option. I'd pass on the giant fuzzy spider.
Unless you are into spiders.
Unless you're pro spider like the Baldwins.
If you're into spiders, go visit Rob.
They take care of all the other animals. It's a whole ecosystem, and then the birds and the hummingbirds.
No, not in my car. They don't. In my car, they become mush. No,
I don't think we want them in our car.
I don't want them.
What are they going to do? You're taking some. They don't know. Where am I?
Not in your car, and not in the bathroom at nighttime. Yeah, my wife is very pro spider in general. I mean, because they're great. Getting rid of other pest insects.
Yes.
But what she will not tolerate is spiders either in the bedroom or in the bathroom, particularly at night.
Yeah, the bedroom thing.
She doesn't want those kind of surprises.
You want a spider
in your mouth,
night,
taking over your brain, running your life. There was.
I don't want them in my car.
One more spider story. One more spider. It's a very spider heavy podcast today. So yesterday I'm in the bathroom washing my hands. I look over and all three, 2 dogs and 1 cat are just staring at me. They just follow me everywhere I go. The other 2 cats will come when they feel like it, but 2 dogs and 1 cat always. And there's a spider. I'm like, oh, I got to get something so I can take this spider outside. And I go and I'm looking around, like, because I don't have a cup or anything in the bathroom. I'm looking around for something. And I turn around and the spider's gone. And all the animals were where the spider was. And now they're all dissipated. I'm like, well, one of them ate a spider.
We will never know, but we had a little snack.
The circle of life.
All right. So, and you had another car that was just like the Invista, right?
Exactly. You could hardly tell the difference. Power, everything totally the same. I had the 25 Porsche Cayenne GTS Coupe or Coupe.
So it's even a fastback SUV like the Invista.
It's hard to tell the difference. So the GTS, the Cayenne GTS has been a part of the lineup before, but when they redid the Cayenne, they sort of introduced the trims almost like in stages. So the GTS arrives for 2025, and they have it as a coupe or an SUV. We drove the coupe, and we drove it around beautiful, twisting, crazy switchback roads near near where they're based out of in oh my god, what's this in Georgia? Atlanta. Thank you. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, what's the city?
Town.
Base where they are. Yeah, Hotlanta. So this is so that when you get the Cayenne, there's a V6, there's a plug-in hybrid, there's a V8. In the V8s, this sits in the middle. So you have the Cayenne S, which has it, which is normal-ish in power, and then you have the Cayenne GT, which is bazonkers and also crazy expensive, and then you have the GTS, which sits in the middle. It's the just right temperature, like, with she's picking out the different oatmeals and picking out the different beds. It's the just right oatmeal. It's exactly the perfect one if you want to have the performance, but you also don't want to have the crazy expense of going with something like a GT.
I don't think Porsche is going to appreciate you compare their car to oatmeal.
I don't know, but it's the just right oatmeal. When you're trying to pick the just right
oatmeal or Buick, I mean, which would you rather be compared to?
Right.
It's still a Porsche. If Porsche made oatmeal, it'd probably be really good, and
it would be really nice oatmeal. It would be perfectly sourced grains, and so I really like this. So I don't drive Porsches very often, and the last time I drove the Cayenne was quite some time ago. So it wasn't just about, for me, getting into the GTS trim of this. It was getting some time with the Cayenne, period, the end. So it was very, very fun to drive. The only thing that was tricky on this was we had German spec vehicles. So they had the ceramic brakes. They were a little grabby. They're a little too grabby. I wasn't used to it. And they were kind of saying, like, in Germany, this is what we all have. We're used to it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not. So both me and my drive partner, it's like when we first got in, it's like, sorry, as we kept braking too hard. You can make very gently and it grabs. And with the what you're getting in this is you have a twin turbo 4-liter V8 engine, 493 horsepower, 486 pound-feet of torque, and an 8-speed automatic. There isn't a lot to say other than it moves, it goes, it flies. You want to match the gas on this? Hold on. It's so much fun to drive. And it has a lot of different components that it has incorporated into it to make sure that not only does it have the power to do what it's supposed to do, that it also handles that way. The suspension system and different things that they've done, like all this very technical stuff that everything is named. It's the Porsche this and the Porsche that, a Porsche Active Suspension Management, which is PASM. Like they only place with more acronyms is like the military. Everything has an acronym at Porsche. So it drives, it's something you can drive and you can enjoy it, but it handles well. And what it does is give you that power, but not do it in such an aggressive, harsh way that you would not want to take this on a road trip. Like it strikes this really good balance. And I think that's what the GTS was supposed to do. If you want to take it to a track, if you want to drive all out on twisty roads in Georgia, you can do that. And it handles beautifully. Like your passenger, on twisty roads when we're driving, and we drive pretty hard, most of us, I think, when we're testing this stuff out, you can easily make your passenger queasy.
Not me. I always just cruise along.
You always just cruise along, except for Sam.
I never drive hard.
And Robbie, right? You don't ever drive hard going around corners in a car like this.
I don't even know what corners are.
You don't even know what you just drive in straight lines. You just stay on the highway. So, but
I drive so gently that people never realize that we've changed direction.
Oh, wow. So this one, whether you're driving gently like Sam and Roberto or driving a little more aggressively, it's so centered and it's so stable that you don't get that sort of pushing you to the side thing that tends to make people a little queasy. So it's very, very fun to drive and very easy to drive. It actually is all of 10 millimeters, which is 0.3 inches lower. That's part of what they've done with the GTS, which again helps that little tiny bit, helps it handle that much better, lowers things just about a little bit, makes it a little bit more well-mannered. I drove the coupe. I did not drive the SUV, but it was such a fun vehicle to drive. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I thought you could take this. That's what was so brilliant about it. It has all this performance. You can drive so aggressively, but we drove through these winding roads, but also spent some time on the highway. And on the highway, it was just this glorious little cruiser. It was well-mannered enough and comfortable enough that I could see spending hours behind the wheel of this on a road trip, as opposed to some little sporty cars that have sort of the same kind of handling and features that after 10 minutes on a road trip, you have felt every pebble, every bump, every crease, every seam in the road. And after an hour, you think, I want to get out of this thing. I need a break. This never hits that. It's totally comfortable the whole time. So it's kind of, it's just balanced. That's the word I would use to describe it. Balanced, just very, very balanced so that you feel comfortable, you feel at ease. And it's a stupid amount of fun to drive, but it is also a little on the pricey side. It is, depending on whether
Porsche.
you get it's a Porsche. You are paying for all that. But here's the thing. It feels like, sometimes you get into a car and you look at the price and you think, okay, it's pretty, it's this, it's that, but I'm not paying that much money for a car. I don't feel like you get what you pay for. And this one, the coupe is $129,500. It's not cheap. This is a luxury car, but looking at that $129,500, I sort of sat there and thought, yeah, if I have that kind of money to burn on a luxury car, on a performance car, this feels like it's worth every penny of that. I didn't look at it and think that's a ridiculous price for what you're getting. It's absolutely perfect. So this is going to be one of my favorite cars I think I've driven this year, just because it was such a nicely done. It's pretty. It feels luxurious inside. It doesn't feel over the top. It's comfortable. It has performance. It has comfort. It's the just right version of the V8. I loved it. There you go. Bam. Except for the grabby brakes.
Well, I've driven the Cayenne with the grabby brakes, and a dog ran out in front of us. It was me and Steve Ewing, and it stopped well short of the dog. It ran out in front of us on a back road in Northern California. I was like, wow, good job. Good job.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Are we going to guess on the delivery charge on that one?
Dun, dun, dun.
I didn't break it out. I didn't break out delivery charge.
Oh, no.
The delivery charge.
Secret.
Okay, I didn't have to break it out for what I wrote out. You guys put guesses, and I'll tell you at one point if you're right. 1,200 is Roberta. What do you think it is, Sam?
I'm going to say 995.
Okay,
because these really expensive cars these really expensive European cars tend to, because they, rather than hiding the excessive price in the delivery charge, they just put it right up front in the price you pay for the vehicle, and so they don't charge you an exorbitant delivery fee.
Yeah, it's not a secret. It's not like, surprise, $1,500 for your delivery. You're like, wait, what? How has my car cost so much money? Why does it cost $50? Wait, but the other car is only $900. Why?
So, I mean, the sticker price on this, it's basically the same as the Buick, just with an extra one attached to it.
Yes, exactly. An extra one. I think
needing one. And
that's the only difference between these two. That's it. That's it.
You carry the one to the front of the numbers. And
there you go.
And
there you have your Porsche.
But then when you drive, here's the thing: they're all expensive, all the Porsches. But then when you drive it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
So now I understand. So
you're like,
Roberto,
okay, yeah,
you would have won, but you were far, far short of what the number actually is. 1995.
Oh, really?
Wow.
1995.
So I still won.
Yeah,
you still won. Yeah.
You got to add another seat. See, Sam, you should have used your rule. You had a 1 to the front.
That's right, because it is a Porsche.
Okay.
You had a 1. And they're like, it's I don't know, $2,000. Why? I don't know.
It's kind of like Apple pricing. Just think of what should this cost, and then add 30% to it. Yeah, 25-30% to it.
But then they do last. Those Apple things. I mean, I have old iPhones that just keep going.
Yeah.
Of course, my other iPhone. Anyway, why are we talking about phones? Spiders. Let's get back to spiders. What does spiders have to do with the Ram 1500, Sam?
Maybe they had something to do with it. You never know.
Nothing that I'm aware of. I had no issues with spiders with the Ram 1500. So the one I had was the the 2025 Ram 1500 Limited, which had the 6-foot 4-inch box. It's a crew cab with the 6-foot 4-inch bed, which is about a foot longer than most
6-foot
crew cab light duty.
I thought you said 6-inch 4-inch. I'm like, that's not a very big bed.
No, 6 foot 4-inch. Yes. So most crew cab light duty pickups, full size pickups, are usually about a 5.5 foot box, and this is almost 6.5 feet. So it's an longer box, so you can put more stuff in there, which is great. The one I had was in the Delmonico Red Pearl Coat, which is a really fantastic color. It's not Soul Crystal Red, but it looks really good on this truck. It's sort of a burgundy color.
It's just brown enough that if you get dirty, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's absolutely true. And they had the Nightshade package that had the black grille. They made the grille bigger this year, among other things. And so it's got the black grille and the black wheels and everything. And the Limited comes standard with the new high output Hurricane straight 6-cylinder twin turbo engine, which means it puts out 540 horsepower, 521 foot-pounds of torque, which is more than any of the non-Hellcat V8s that have ever been offered in the Ram 1500. So this thing has plenty of power Power is not something that is in short supply with this thing. Even though this is a fairly full size truck, it's fairly hefty, but it had plenty of performance. One of the reasons why Stellantis gave for developing this engine and putting it into the Ram, dropping all the Hemi V8s from the at least from the light duty Rams, was to improve fuel efficiency, which it does slightly. Let's see, on the previous, or let's see, let me find it here now. Because this one, as a pre-production model, did not have a Monroney attached to it. So the fuel economy for the Ram 1500 HO four-wheel drive, because four-wheel drive is also standard on the Limited, is 15 miles per gallon city, 21 highway, 17 combined, which is not, nothing to get excited about. If you're looking for something with decent fuel economy, it is not nearly as good as what you would get with an F-150 hybrid. Those can easily do over 20. And in a week of driving this thing, what was frankly mostly highway driving, some city, probably about 25% city driving, 75% highway driving. It was not nothing to get excited about in terms of fuel economy. So compared to the 2024 model with the 5.7 liter Hemi, and that engine only had about 400 horsepower. So that's more equivalent to the standard Hurricane engine. That one was rated at 19 miles per gallon combined, and this one was 17. I got about 17 and a half over the course of a week of driving.
Overachiever.
Yeah. Well,
75% on the freeway.
So nothing, fuel. If you're interested in best fuel economy, the Ram 1500, probably not, at least right now, not until the Ram Charger shows up, or the Rev, probably not your best choice. On the other hand, if you are looking, personally, of the four full-size pickups that are on the market, the F-150, Silverado and Sierra, and the Toyota Tundra, I think this is by far and away the best looking of the bunch. I think it also has by far and away the nicest interior, especially in the Limited. But even on the lower trim levels, the interior of the Rams is really, really nice. It's very comfortable. It's got lots of space to store stuff. The materials and the fit and finish were excellent, which is good considering this is not an inexpensive truck. The one that I had the new 14-inch or 14 and a half inch screen. So there's now the standard screen is now the 12-inch that was optional on the previous pre-2024 models. That's standard. And now the 14-inch is optional. And so that's what I had on this Limited. It still has some physical controls. It's a portrait style screen, but it still has some physical controls for things like temperature and fan speed and stuff like that, stacked on buttons and switches stacked on either side of the screen. So still very easy to use. It does have support for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, wireless, in both cases. It's very, very nice to drive. The Limited comes standard with the air suspension package. It also rides on 22-inch wheels, which are quite large, and probably wouldn't want to be hitting any curbs with those things or bending them on a Michigan pothole. But overall, the ride quality was excellent. One thing, this was the first Stellantis vehicle that I've had a chance to drive that has their new active drive assist feature, which is their hands-free driving system, and that is equivalent to Ford Blue Cruise, Chevy or GM Super Cruise. So on certain divided highways, You can engage it. It's very easy to engage. Basically, one button press on the steering wheel when you're on a highway where it's approved and you're centered in the lane. The icon in the cluster will show steering wheel with hands off the steering wheel. Unlike Ford, Stellantis does put capacitive sensors in the steering wheel. So when it wants you to grab the steering wheel, it actually knows when your hands are on the steering wheel, unlike Ford, which is just taking a wild guess with the torque sensor. So no false positives or false negatives about hands on or off the steering wheel. One of the things I've complained about with Blue Cruise is the interface, where usually, especially on the F-150s, they tend to have a predominantly blue theme on the instrument cluster display, and then blue icons of a different shade of blue, which it's not, unless you're looking very carefully, it's very easy to miss when it wants you to put your hands back on the wheel. Not the case with the Ram. You get black background when you're using the active drive assist, nice bright green icons, and there's also light bars on either end of the instrument cluster. So instead of putting a light bar in the steering wheel like GM does, they put them on the ends of the instrument cluster. It's still very visible to you. So when it's in hands-free mode, they're green. When it wants you to take the wheel, they turn red. And it's very, very clear. Very little chance for mode confusion with this. And the Limited also has a heads-up display, so you also get that repeated in the HUD. The Ram also has a haptic seat. So when it wants you to take control, it'll buzz the seat, which is also a good thing. As far as the performance of the system, I would rate it kind of roughly equivalent to the Blue Cruise. So not as good as Super Cruise. It's not as good at actually keeping the truck centered in the lane, especially if you're going around curves. It will tend to drift to the outside of the curve a little bit, which for a big, fairly wide truck as this is not necessarily confidence inspiring. And it sometimes will wander a little bit in the lane, even on a straight road. But overall, it's not bad, but it's not as good as Super Cruise. It does have lane change on demand. And one of the nice things about the interface, it shows you the steering wheel in the instrument cluster. It shows you the steering wheel. If there's a vehicle in front of you within range, it shows where that vehicle is relative to you. And then it shows, a lot of vehicles will show like the lane markings on there that indicate where you are or where the lanes are, that it's detecting the lanes. And an interesting thing that the Ram system does is if there's an adjacent lane that does not have traffic in it, and it's possible to do a lane change, it will show that as a dashed line, like a regular lane marking. If you are, say, for example, if you're in the left-hand lane and you just have the shoulder to your left, it will show that as a solid line. Or if there is a vehicle in the adjacent lane that's not a shoulder, it will change that dashed lane marking to a solid lane marking. So you can, with a quick glance, you can see if there's a dashed lane, then you have the ability to do a lane change on demand just by tapping the turn signal stock. So it's a nice interface that works well. The system is fairly conservative, which is good because this is a big truck. It wants to make sure you have enough room. And so, whenever it's showing that a lane change is available, you can be fairly confident that there's nobody there that's going to get cut off by you. And it also seemed to detect, even if the lane was available, using the radar sensors, the rear radar sensors, it seems to detect the closing speed. So if there's somebody coming up in the adjacent lane that is moving fairly quickly and might arrive in that space by the time you actually execute a lane change, it will show it as, even though it's open right now, it'll show it as a solid line and won't do an auto lane change until that vehicle is clear. So there was confidence inspiring in that way. So some good stuff there. Next year on the Wagoneer, they will be launching their hands off and eyes off system. And presumably at some point that will also come to the high end Rams as well. That's going to add a LiDAR sensor to the package. But for now, it's using cameras and radar. And it's not a bad system. Not great, but not bad. And the rest of the truck, aside from the fuel economy, which was just so, was really nice. It's for a big truck. It was very pleasant. Fairly pleasant to drive, comfortable. It had the multifunction tailgate, so you can drop it like a regular tailgate, or it's split 60-40. And you can open them up sideways, barn door style. So if you had something long to stick out one side, you can do that and keep the other side closed. Had the trifold tonneau cover. Everything else in there was good. So if you're looking for a full size pickup truck, I would absolutely consider the Ram. Although I'm not sure I would necessarily opt for a limited, because like all the other trucks that have gotten really stupidly expensive, this one has gotten really stupidly expensive.
It's so crazy. Like that night edition, that's a $4,200 package.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And all in, the one I was driving was $87,535. And this isn't even the top trim level. This, that they have the new tungsten trim level, which is even more expensive. So $87,535 for this truck.
$1,400. There, I'm saying my number first, really quickly before.
$1,495.
Nicole wins. It's $1,995.
Oh, $1,995.
Well, it's a pretty big truck. They got to carry it by hand.
Yeah, well, it's long, so they can't put as many of them on the transports as they can with a shorter truck.
I guess. Sure.
But I
say so.
Even though I did complain about the fuel economy being just so, that straight 6-cylinder engine, that is a really nice engine. It's very smooth. It's very powerful. It's a fantastic engine. So I think, when they start building the new Chargers next year with that engine as well, I think most people are probably not going to care that it doesn't have a V8 in it anymore.
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think people even really notice. If you didn't tell them, they wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Like most people, if you put them in a car and told them it was a V8, they could drive that car to the end of time thinking they owned a V8.
Yeah.
Most people don't work on cars. It doesn't
sound like a V8, but it sure pulls
even
like
people
one.
who grew up fixing cars don't work on their cars anymore because they just go now. So they don't know. Yeah. If you gave this to a 55-year-old person and said, hey, it's got a V8, and they had it for 15 years, they said, yeah, it's got a V8 in it. Oh, all right, cool. Never know.
All right. Let's move on to some of the news of the week. So did either of you ever get a chance to drive the Lexus LFA?
No.
I did not. No, I did not.
I'm trying to think. No, I didn't.
Yeah, back around 2009, Lexus launched the LFA as their last supercar. Had a big V10 engine in it that revved like mad. They only built 500 LFAs, and then they were gone. And they have not built anything like that since. Well, now next year they're going to be launching something that is Autocar is calling it the LFR, and this is going to be the basis of their new GT3 race car. Right now, Lexus runs a GT3 car based on the RF, the RCF. And they've been running that car for 6 or 7 years now. And, the current generation RC has been around for quite a while, and it's getting a little old. And 2 years ago, Toyota showed off a concept for a next generation GT3 race car. And then they said, yeah, we're going to build something like that, and it looks, there's been spy photos of it now out testing, and this long hood looks like it's going to be about a 600 horsepower V8 in the LFR. What do you think of this design?
I mean, it looks cool.
It does look good. I'm not going to argue about how it looks. It looks good.
Yeah.
You could land like a helicopter on the hood, so that's nice.
You often need to do that. That's something that
You
could
often have like, where do we park our helicopter? Oh, hold on.
Right on the hood of the car. This is not a problem for us.
Yeah. So this thing ain't going to be cheap. It's probably going to be, probably somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 and built in very limited volumes. But
it looks very James Bondy. I feel like James Bond should be driving this. It has a James Bond vibe.
Yeah, the Autocar article, says Lexus to launch Vantage rivaling V8 supercar.
Oh, there you go.
So they're pitching it straight at at Aston Martin. So,
I actually didn't read the headline. I was just looking at the cars, so that's pretty good.
They're definitely very James Bondy.
Yes.
All right, Robbie, in California, there's a lot of EVs in California. Do you see many? Do you see many BZ4Xs? Toyota
I see a surprising number of BZ4Xs. That's the thing. I'm like, man, people are buying them. I see some Solterras, but I feel like this is a surprising number because it's more than But Toyota people are Toyota people. They're like, I want an EV. I'm a Toyota person, so I'm buying a BZ4X.
Okay, even though it's kind of not particularly impressive.
It's just kind of It's just kind of
That was such a delicate.
That was
particularly.
It's just like here's our EV, and we're like, all right, fine.
You wanted an EV. Here's an EV. Take it.
Yeah, leave
us alone.
Yeah.
We also gave you the GR Corolla. What else you want from us?
Yeah. Come back in 3 years and we'll do another one.
Yeah. But anyway. Let's say compared to other vehicles, compared to other EVs, no, I don't see very many. Relative to the rest of the EVs in the world that I see a lot of, I see more VinFast.
You have to take Tesla in comparison.
Well, you do have a
there's a VinFast dealer down the street from my house. So
yeah.
So for however long, and I've actually seen a couple Oceans, but not as many as the BZ4X.
I saw an Ocean just the other. I was like, oh,
yeah. So I've seen some Oceans. I see some VinFast. I've seen them all.
Well, apparently there's quite a few of them in New York City now. Matt Hardigree was in a parking garage. He's from the Autopian. He was in a parking garage last week and spotted 3 of them sitting there plugged in and charging. And when he took a closer look, he realized that they all had the special license plates that start with a T and end with a C, which is for the Taxi and Limousine Commission. So these were all ride-hailing cars. These were Uber and Lyft vehicles that were being charged up. And I guess Toyota is offering some really good lease deals on these things. And so, a lot of Uber drivers have been picking these things up and using them to shuttle people around.
I mean, there's a huge push for the Prius to be in taxi, so you saw a lot of those. So, you get them in the fleets, get those numbers, and then people see them around. Like, maybe I'll buy the ugly Prius.
So cool,
and they did.
Yeah.
And if I was hailing a ride, I'd rather be riding around in the backseat of a BZ4X than the backseat of a Prius.
Oh, yeah, totally.
That's true. If I had a choice.
I've always wondered how they pulled that whole Prius thing off. They're like, oh, who's sitting back there? Tiny people, I suppose.
Tiny people. It's those tweens and toddlers again. No.
Yeah. Middle schoolers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You mentioned Fisker. We'll pour out one last one for Fisker, probably.
Yeah.
They finally officially filed for bankruptcy this week. Chapter 11, going to try and reorganize. But I don't know. Do either of you honestly think anybody would buy the assets of Fisker at this point?
No.
I mean, they made a cool looking truck, but I mean, so did VinFast. So, I mean, anyone can make a cool looking truck if they try hard enough.
Yeah.
I don't see anyone. Yeah. The Alaska look cool, but I don't think anyone's going to buy the company just so they can, have a
I
deal last.
feel bad for them. It was I always feel bad when a company goes under because a company's a company, but behind it there are people that are doing all sorts of work. There's engineers, designers, and all that stuff, and it's like that stinks for the people who really have poured their heart and soul into making that car. But I feel bad for the owners too because now you're like the people who bought that. Like if you got one of those already, like would they ship something 4,000? It wasn't a lot.
Yeah, I think it was between 4,000 and 5,000.
Yeah, so those people were like hardcore Fisker fans, right? They thought this was cool. They thought it was so cool that they were one of the first people to plunk down money on this, probably before anybody had said anything about how it was going to drive, right? You're that excited about your new car. Now the company's gone bankrupt and there's no one to support your software-defined vehicle.
Yep.
If you can get one for super cheap, you can take that motor and those batteries out and do a resto mod with like pretty much anything. So I'm just throwing that out there. I just keep saying that for people who like, if you can find a Fisker for like $5,000.
How long do you think it's going to be, Sam? Because you helped me write a story. You gave me great quotes for a story I wrote in CarBuzz before it actually went bankrupt, but it kind of looked like it was going to happen, about what would happen because it's a software-defined vehicle that eventually it could be bricked. How long? We should take a bet. How long do you think before really the people who are driving a Fisker Ocean right now truly face some kind of problem that's like, that's it. You can't drive it. Your car is done.
I think it'll probably be, if the car's working now and, unless they have some sort of mechanical issue, something physically breaks.
Yeah.
They'll probably be able to go, at least 2 or 3 years and maybe a lot longer.
Yeah, before you think something software-wise goes wonkety and requires.
Yeah, I mean, what'll probably happen is, there's the software has gotten better, but it's still very buggy.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll get to a point where they realize this is never going to get fixed.
Yeah,
and it's just getting more and more annoying.
Yeah,
and so then people will just give up on it.
They're going to get a new phone and it's not going to pair correctly.
I wouldn't even think about something like that. Yeah, if there's
hopefully there's not a security issue that Fisker didn't see, because that happens. Everyone has security issues. That's how the software world works. And there's no one to update your security. So now if there's there's some sort of potential for bad actors to do something to these vehicles. I mean, if the car has an in-car modem, maybe turn that off.
Yeah.
If you had a Fisker right now, would you try and dump it? You guys, let's say you guys bought it, you loved it, you bought one. What would you do? You have a Fisker right this minute.
I mean, the resale value at this point is so low that you might as well just keep it.
Hold on to it. Yeah, hold on to it for a few years until it becomes
perhaps one of the biggest risks, is because it's an EV. Unlike a gas vehicle, if you bought a car from a company that made internal combustion vehicles and they went bankrupt, you could still, if you manage to keep everything physically working, for 20, 30 years, you could still pull up to a gas pump and fill the tank with fuel and, drive off. With an EV, one of the things you might see is potentially changes to, some of the software on chargers, and it may get to a point where, this thing will not charge anymore because the software can't talk to the charger.
Especially with NACS, because all the cars have to be updated for NACS for the Tesla J3400, blah, blah, whatever you want to call it. That requires a software update for the cars to plug into that. So I think for that, if you're like just level 2 charging, you should be fine, because it's not really
probably
software handshake. But like for DC fast charging, that's where you're gonna there's a potential where at some point it just doesn't want to connect, because there might be a bug or there might be a change in the software in the
Okay.
Anyway, if you can get one for super cheap, you want to drive it around town, and then eventually take the batteries and everything out.
No, it's not long for this.
Put it in an El Camino.
Yeah, or put the you could take the batteries and motors out, put them in old El Camino, and then drop a Chevy small block into the Fisker. Just like
there you go.
Bob Lutz did, the first time Fisker went bankrupt. He formed a company with a friend of his called VL Automotive. I think it was VL, and they were re-engineering Fisker Karmas, and I think they ultimately did about 100 of them and put the powertrain from a Corvette ZR1, a C6 Corvette ZR1, into the Fisker Karma, and replaced the plug-in hybrid powertrain that was in there with a supercharged V8, and did a few styling tweaks to it. So you could do that. You could put in an LS3 small block into a Fisker Karma.
Mm-hmm.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? It'll be fine.
Yeah. Speaking of things that they put LS3 small blocks into, Tommy Micah, our friend from TFL, recently did some drag racing with a Miata RF that had a 2017 LS3 small block installed in it, and blew away a brand new Mustang GT with this thing.
It's just kind of funny.
Yeah. And you would think, as small as a Miata is, that, stuffing a V8 in it would actually be really hard. But turns out, it's not easy, but it's not that hard, because one of the reasons why so many people put Chevy small block V8s into so many cars, so many, non-GM vehicles, is because it's actually a surprisingly small package. Because it doesn't have overhead cams, so the cylinder heads don't stick out that far. It's not that wide. It's not that long. And it's also, especially the modern ones with aluminum blocks and heads, are not that heavy. A fully dressed, LSV8 with, fuel system and ignition system and exhaust and everything only weighs about 400 pounds, which is not ridiculously heavy. And so you find people putting them into all kinds of stuff, like this V8 Miata that they were testing. And like I said, blew away a Mustang GT, and the link to the video will be in the show notes. But because the package is so small, back in the 2000s, GM, GM, Ram, and or it was still Dodge then, and Ford were all planning on putting smaller diesel V8s into their light duty pickups. They already had them in their heavy duty pickups, but they wanted to put them in the light duty trucks. And so Ford had a 4.4 liter diesel V8 that they were developing. And while that was supposed to launch in the F-150 in 2010, they canceled that. It never did, but they did end up using that engine in Range Rovers. And the Cummins 5 liter V8 diesel that was supposed to go into the Ram pickups, that ended up getting used by Nissan in the Titan. And GM had a 4.5 liter diesel V8 that they developed. And I actually saw this thing at a GM event in 2009, I think. 2009. They used to do this summer tech event at the Milford Proving Grounds. And it was supposed to launch in 2010. Well, post bankruptcy, they ended up canceling this thing. But they had actually tooled up the factory where they were going to build these things, and they were ready to start production in 2010. They ended up not going forward with it. One of the key elements of this engine was they designed it so that it would fit in the same package envelope as the gas small block. So, at the time, when they first started talking about it, we were thinking, I remember writing a few articles speculating about some of the applications where they could end up using this thing. Basically, it would have fit anywhere where, into any GM vehicle that had a small block V8 in it could have used this engine. And they ended up canceling it. They took all the tooling out of the factory. And for a while, they had it in storage somewhere in the Detroit area. They never went into volume production. They had built, a few hundred of these things for testing and in prototype vehicles. But in the last couple of years, a couple of these have actually started to turn up somewhere, for sale. I guess there was one on eBay that was listed as non-running, but the Drive has an article about it. They found one and they reached out to the person that was selling it, and they had two of these prototype engines, and they were looking at the potential of maybe the writer was looking at the potential of seeing if they could buy them and see if they could actually get them running. Would have been pretty interesting if they had, but it would have been a pretty cool project to try and get one of these things going.
Yeah, that'd have been cool.
It goes in the woulda, coulda, shoulda column, right? If they'd pulled it off.
Coulda, shoulda.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember one of the articles I wrote back probably around 2007 or so, when they first started talking publicly about this engine, was, this thing could have been interesting in a Cadillac, to be more competitive with some of the premium German brands that were doing still had a lot of V8 engines at the time. Like have this thing in a CTS. This thing would have been pretty powerful. It would have been somewhere around 400 horsepower, I think is the number that they were talking about at the time, 300 or 400 horsepower.
That would have been very cool.
Yeah. But alas, it never came to be.
It never happened.
Yep. Speaking of continuing with engines.
Yes.
Friend of the show, Casey Liss. I don't know if either of you ever listened to the Accidental Tech podcast.
I have not.
Casey and John Siracusa and Marco Arment do this show. And the show originally was spawned out of another podcast. They started off doing the three of them started doing a car podcast back in like 2011, of which they only did a dozen episodes. But then they transitioned and started doing ATP. But they still occasionally will do a car segment, usually as part of their after show, where they talk about whatever they're driving or buying or problems they're having with their cars. And on the most recent episode 592, in the after show portion, it starts at an hour and 41 minutes. And I'll have a link to this in the show notes. Casey talks about a little problem that his wife had with their Volvo XC90.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So they've got a 2017 XC90.
Okay.
And it's a T6. So it's the one that has the 2-liter 4-cylinder with the supercharger and a turbocharger on it. And while Casey, who's also a software developer, was out at the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference in California a couple of weeks ago, getting ready to go into the keynote presentation, and he gets a text message from his wife. Can I call you? And so he calls her back, and she says, the car's dead.
What does that mean, the car is dead? Like, what do you mean it's dead?
Like, it wouldn't start.
Yeah. Okay, that's dead.
Yeah.
Temporarily dead, though. Not like it ran off the edge of a cliff dead.
No. Just, it would not run. And so they had it towed to the local Volvo dealer. And I was chatting with Casey on Slack the other day after I had listened to this. And what happened to this engine is the craziest thing I have ever heard in my life. I have never heard of such an insane engine failure. I've heard of engines failing in a lot of different ways. This one was completely new to me.
Okay, what happened?
So apparently the serpentine belt that drives the supercharger and the alternator and the AC compressor and a bunch of other stuff had broken. It snapped.
Okay.
Which normally, that would disable the car, but it would not destroy your engine. And turns out that when they started taking stuff apart, they found on one of the pulleys, so that, if you look at modern engines that have these big, wide serpentine belts that wind around all these components to drive all these components, the belts are pretty wide and they're ribbed. And then on the pulleys, there's similar set of ribs, and this helps give extra grip, so they can drive, provide enough grip, so the belts don't slip on the pulleys.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow a very small little pebble got up in there, got jammed in between two of the ribs on the pulley, on one of the pulleys. In turn, as the pulley turned and the belt ran over it, this tiny little pebble started cutting up the pulley, or cutting up the belt, until the belt snapped. Normally, not that big a deal. Belt's about $100. Maybe
inconvenience,
50,
replace
for
the
labor.
belt, you go about your business.
Yeah, your alternator's not going to work, and your engine's going to stop. But that wasn't the end of what went wrong. When the belt snapped, it apparently, in the process of spinning around, flew into the cover around the timing belt cover. And on this Volvo engine, there's a plastic cover over the timing belt. And the timing belt goes from the crankshaft and drives your camshafts. And as your camshafts turn, they move the valves up and down. And those need to be in sync with the crankshaft. Because if those get out of sync with the crankshaft, then your valves open up when they're not supposed to, like when the piston is at the top of its travel and your valves get bent, and then that's when really bad things happen.
Bad things happen.
And so the serpentine belt apparently shattered the cover on the timing belt, and in turn damaged the timing belt. And so as the engine's running without a timing belt, it bent the valves. And so now he's looking at somewhere between $14,000 and $20,000 to repair the engine or replace the engine
because of a teeny tiny little pebble.
A teeny tiny little pebble.
That's horrifying.
Yes,
rocks, man. Why do we even have them?
I don't know. So they should definitely never be around.
Is he going to try? Is he going to fix it, or is he like, goodbye Volvo, your car, you're done?
Well, as of a couple of days ago, last time I talked to him, they had not made a decision. They were trying to see if they could file a claim with their insurance to see if the insurance would pay for the engine repair. If not,
rock.
I don't know. That's damage to your car, right?
Yeah.
If the rock smacked into your car when you were driving and broke your windshield or dented your car, you could file a claim to have it fixed. File a glass claim to have the windshield fixed. So I wonder. I mean, it's not something. It's not their negligence, right? A rock just got in there. It can happen. Yeah. I'm really curious to see. You listen to this podcast all the time, Sam. I need to know the resolution.
Yeah, probably by next week we'll have an answer on that one. But last I talked to Casey a few days ago, he was still waiting to hear back from the insurance company if they were going to cover this. More than likely, what's going to end up happening is they will sell the car and buy something else used to replace it.
I wonder if the insurance company would just total it. How much is that car worth?
It's a 2017 XC90. It's probably worth. It's certainly going to be worth more than $20,000.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes they total cars for weird reason. It gets close enough.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But that is a weird engine failure.
Through no fault of anyone's either. Just the vagaries of driving the vehicle that it got
happened
just right. It happens.
Yeah.
That sounds like one of those things, like one of those stories or something like that happens to a race car driver and all their dreams are shattered because one random piece of tarmac flew into the engine just in the right way. Wow, that stinks.
All right. Chinese EVs. This week I visited a company here in Michigan called CareSoft that does, they do engineering consultancy. They do design work for a lot of companies. They also do teardowns and benchmarking on vehicles and vehicle systems. And one of the interesting things that they have, one of the interesting capabilities, is they have a CT scanner for a car. And what they can do is they can take a new car, put it in, and it's a very large CT scanner that they developed. They can put the vehicle in there, and they take about 15 million images and stitch them all together and create a complete 3D CAD model of the vehicle without taking anything apart. because the scanner can go through and detect the different materials that are in there, different material densities, and so on. And with that many images, it can generate very high resolution imagery, and basically have a complete CAD model of the entire vehicle. That then they can use that to do all kinds of other stuff. They can use that to do simulated crash testing on the vehicle and aerodynamic testing and all kinds of other stuff. But one of the things that they've got going on right now at their facility in Livonia, Michigan, is they're doing simultaneous teardowns of 6 Chinese EVs. They've got a Zeekr X, the Hosan, I forget the model name of that one, Netta, I think, or something like that. They have the BYD Seagull, which sells for as little as $11,500 in China. They had the Leapmotor C10, and Leapmotor is the Chinese company that Stellantis formed a joint venture with last year, and they're going to start selling a couple of Leapmotor models, including the C10, in other markets outside of China. And they also had the Xiaopeng G6 and the Avatar 12. But the C10 I thought was particularly interesting because this is a car that the Stellantis Leapmotor joint venture is going to sell in places like Europe and Latin America and other countries as well. And this is like a RAV4 CRV size compact crossover. It's electric, has a range of about 275, 280 miles. Cost $22,500 in China. And that includes a LiDAR sensor for the ADAS system. So anybody telling you, LiDAR is only for really expensive cars, no, it's getting to be on everything in China. And looking at this thing was really nice. I mean, the interior was really, it did not feel like let's put it this way. The interior felt a lot more expensive than the Envista, the Buick Envista.
Oh no, don't tell Buick.
Yeah. Oh no, not better than the Envista. That's bad news.
For less money. I mean,
see that it is less money, but it's always like, but if it was here, like here, would it be less money still once it goes to the 90?
Probably not less than the Envista, but these things are designed for Chinese crash test standards, which are not as stringent as U.S. standards. It would probably add somewhere around $8,000 to $10,000 to the price. So you're still looking at $32,000 for this thing, for an electric crossover, compact electric crossover, which is right in the heart of the market. The styling on this particular one is not particularly exciting, but frankly, neither is the styling on most cars in this segment. So, if you could get something like this for $30,000 with, 300-ish miles of range, would you be interested?
Yeah. I mean, $30,000.
Realistically, yeah. I mean, it's
then of course you have to add the tariff to that.
I was say, as long as the tariff is there, like everyone's clear. Yeah. None of these are coming to the U.S. with the tariff the way it's structured right now, but the tariff can't last forever.
Yeah. So that's the Leapmotor C10.
Don't tell that to Cuba.
But if you're in Mexico and you're interested in buying an EV, this might be something you might want to take a look at. And the Seagull actually is really impressive as well. That thing starts at $11,500, and it's all hard plastics inside, but it's certainly no worse than a Chevy Bolt.
It's pretty on par with the Chevy Bolt, and you can get it in Mexico. It's called the Dolphin Mini or the Mini Dolphin. They decided not to use the Seagull name because in this part of the world we're like, ew, seagulls. Those things.
It's like, that's not a thing that you went, oh, I'm driving a seagull. Yeah. No, they're annoying little buggers. I don't want to drive that.
It starts at 21
on the beach.
It starts at 21 in Mexico for the Seagull / Mini Dolphin or Dolphin Mini.
Mini Dolphin. I like
The
that.
dolphin sounds like a much nicer like animal
The
that you want to
dolphin sounds.
go.
He's like, oh, it's a dolphin. It's cute. That's cute. That's
Oh,
cute. I'm like, what? No, I don't want to drive one of
let's
those.
call it the pigeon. The pigeon, the sea pigeon.
All right. Road tripping with an EV. We've
Road
all
tripping.
we've all done it to varying degrees. And Atopian's got an interesting story about this guy that did a road trip, a 3,600 mile, 3,600 mile road trip with his Model Y, and added up all the expense he paid, all the money he spent on DC fast charging, the total amount of energy used, and the amount of time he spent DC fast charging. So over the course of this road trip, spent just shy of 11 hours charging the thing. And that didn't include overnight charging at destinations. So that was just, while they're on the road, on this like 2-week road trip.
On the driving parts of things, not the overnight parts of things. Okay.
Yeah. So he spent a grand total of $421.84 on DC fast charging. And at the current U.S. average of, and this obviously does not include California, but the current U.S. average of $31.51 a gallon for gas.
$3.51, not 31.
Yes, $3.51.
What are you guys
You're
paying
adding the
for
extra
that?
one everywhere now, Sam.
Yeah, sorry, that's just California, $31.
Okay.
The U.S. average is $3.51 a gallon. To do the same trip, for the same amount of money, the car would have to get at least 30 miles per gallon, which, frankly, not that much.
Yeah.
Our Honda Civic,
not a Ram 1500, I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, but our Honda Civic, which my wife mostly drives around town, so it's kind of worst case conditions. Averages about 32, 33 miles per gallon, and that's not even a hybrid. Now they've got the new Civic Hybrid that gets 50 miles per gallon. And, there's lots of other hybrids that get, upwards well over 40 miles per gallon, and they're a lot cheaper. So the point of all this is that, if you're going to get an EV, or actually I think in general, I think our policies should be less focused on DC fast charging. We need more focus on level 2 charging, because if you're only going to do DC fast charging, you're actually probably not going to save any money on fuel costs, on energy costs compared to most vehicles. You're going to end up spending the same amount of money. Whereas if you are level 2 charging, you're going to save a huge amount in fuel costs, energy costs.
That's what most people do. That's the thing, though.
Yeah.
It's like 90% of the time, Alex Gayer probably doesn't go on 3,000, how many miles? 3,600 mile road trips. Yeah. So, on that one thing that he did, it's, it's the equivalent of driving a gas car. Okay, cool. On the rest of his life.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it shows you that, like,
also he doesn't have to get his car smogged. Like, I have to get my BRZ smogged right now. That's a pain in my ass.
Oh, is this California thing smogged?
Yeah, we have to smog so our cars don't destroy the environment more so than they already
destroy the environment all we want here. We don't have to get that. But no, that's the thing with an EV. It's like it's such a hard thing to look at it just truly in terms of, am I saving money by buying this? Because there are truly a bazillion factors in it. How you drive, the environment that you drive in, is it cold? Is it, all these different things. I think just buying an EV because you think you're going to save money by buying one is the wrong way to go about it. Like, you just have to kind of want to drive an EV because you want to experience having an electric vehicle. You want the benefit of, okay, so I don't have to buy gas sometimes anymore. I don't like going to a gas station. I'd rather just plug in at home. And not look at these sort of the 3,605 mile road trip and use that as my make or break. You got to think about just kind of
Here's an edge case.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
these aren't good. I'm like,
it's sort of
okay.
like anything, any vehicle you buy it for the 99% of the time you drive your vehicle the same way, let's say, right? And that 1% of the time you do something weird, don't worry about that. Does it work for the 99% of the time you drive your vehicle? That's how it matters. As with any powertrain, whether you're buying a V8 or a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid or an EV, you know?
But I think the bigger issue is, today most people buying EVs are buying, are new car buyers who represent a small minority of overall drivers and overall vehicle buyers. Sell about 3 times as many used vehicles every year in the U.S. as we do new vehicles. And so with that, if you look at the used vehicle market, if we eventually want to replace most or all internal combustion vehicles with electric, we've got to find solutions for all of those people that buy used vehicles to charge. And a much higher proportion of those vehicles, nearly half of people who buy used vehicles, live in a circumstance where they don't have dedicated off-street parking. They, live in apartments, townhouses, whatever, or live in neighborhoods where they have to park curbside. And for those people, right now, charging at home is not an option. And so if we really want to make EVs appealing for the mainstream, and used car buyers really are the mainstream, not new car buyers are not the mainstream. Used car buyers are the mainstream. If we want to make EVs really appealing and viable for the mainstream, we've got to have much more focus on more affordable charging solutions for those drivers. And DC fast charging, while it's important, it's a key part of the solution, cannot be the primary part of the solution.
Yeah, level 2 street charging. I mean, if you go to Europe, you just see that here's a level 2 charger right here on the side of the road, or right next to, like, in a parking space, or curbside, and it's bring your own cable. So you plug, so you don't have that whole issue where, like, oh, vandals are going to destroy the cables, or the cables are strung about. You're like, no, you just plug your cable in, plug it in your car, and you go home, or you go to work, or you go to the store, or you go do all these other things because you're like, oh, okay, and then you move on, and it's less expensive than DC fast charging, and you're not, it's something that you're doing while you're doing something else, which is DC fast charging right now is still, especially some of them are in weird spots where you're like, well, I guess I'm just sitting in my car for 20 minutes. This is like, I'm plugging in level 2. That's one of the weird things. We get the Ioniq 5, and I was like, oh, I'll probably be doing a road trip pretty soon with it. I was like, oh, am I going to have enough time to go get food?
Well, I mean,
whereas before, like, you plug it in, you're like, oh, we got enough time. Let's go get some food. Let's sit down. And now I'm like, I'm going to plug it in. I'm like, oh, but I better hurry, because if this charge is working correctly, I'm not going to have time to get food.
And Nicole, you did that cross country road trip in an EV.
I did.
And you guys had some pretty sketchy places where you were trying to charge.
That is the thing. And I know that is getting better, and they're trying to make that better. And there was a moment where it was when EVs were, I mean, they're still new. Let's face it. It's not like they're mainstream. There we'd see, but they were trying to just put chargers wherever they could put them. This property owner let me put one here. The power grid supports putting it here. Put it here. So there was a little bit of that happening. But those haven't been replaced enough by the ones that are in the right spot in a nice place in a decent area. So it's like, well, I understand it was when it was new, but now that's still the only charging option here. And I'm in a sketchy hotel in the middle of nowhere that looks like the Chainsaw Massacre could happen here. This is not where I want to be at, 10 o'clock at night by myself for however many minutes it takes, 22 minutes, 23 minutes, whatever juice I need to get.
Like an hour, if you're, let's say you're driving a Bolt or a Kona or something, that doesn't charge above, I'm going to sit here for 45 minutes in a corner where they decided, you know what, we put some chargers here, but not a light.
Right.
Yeah.
But I still don't understand. Like, when we put gas stations everywhere, every gas station you go to is nice. It's covered. It's nice. There's something that it's like, let's just stick a charger out here in the middle of the desert with nothing over it, or like there's nothing over. There's no protection. There's no nothing. It is just, it's pouring rain. You get absolutely drenched because in the 2 seconds you have to plug in, there's nothing over your head. And again, I know that they're changing this as it goes on, but still most of them, and you're even the newer ones. Like I was at the mall, our local mall yesterday, and I'm realizing the chargers they have are in the farthest back corner of the parking lot, where this, like, the mall was once this robust, huge mall in the 80s, but now no one in their right mind has parked in that corner of the parking lot in 15 years. Like, the grass is growing up through the cracks in the pavement over there. That's where you're going to park if you want to charge your EV. And weirdly enough, across the street, there's a whole bank of Tesla superchargers in this really busy strip mall with a restaurant and all this stuff. And I'm like, that one's there, but the other EV chargers are in the sketchiest location possible. So it's still a challenge to road trip, and the system just doesn't make it easy. Doesn't make it easy.
Yeah. We road trip from Berlin to Lake Como in Italy, and where we charge, it was covered. It was next to a McDonald's and a bunch of other restaurants. It was just like, oh, this is nice. Like, you pulled up and everyone just like pulled up, and you had like there was a cover with solar panels up there. I'm assuming probably there were. And I went over and I got a McDonald's hamburger, and it turned out being the best McDonald's hamburger I've ever had. Buy McDonald's hamburgers in Germany; they're delicious. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, but
I mean, we are starting to get some better laid out charging setups. GM is now up to, I think, they've got 46 of the stations that they're putting at. They're doing 500 stations with pilot travel centers. So all these truck stops you see along the highways, they're doing 500 of those with chargers that are also set up for pull through charging. So if you're towing a trailer, you can pull through. You don't have to mess around with the trailer, and they have covers on them, canopies, just like the gas pumps do. And I think they're at 46 that are either deployed or are in progress. And I think they want to get to the 500, I think, by the end of next year. So, it's moving in that direction. And others, the Mercedes chargers have covers on them, and EA's got a few. There's some Teslas, I think, that do. But that's what we need more of, is having them conveniently located, with other amenities that are going to be useful while you're sitting there waiting for 15 minutes to an hour for your vehicle to charge.
7-Eleven is supposed to start having charging at their places. And the 7-Eleven, the one near my house, they're still not done. It's been like 3 years.
Really? Are they actually still building it, or is it on hold?
It's like built, but first there was like power issues. Like, they had put it in the wrong spot, so they had to like redo all this stuff. They had to dig up the street. It's a huge mess. It is now June, and it looks like they've been doing work on it, but the last 2 weeks they haven't done anything. And I don't think it's going to be done by the end of the year. It's like a 4-year weird thing. But the idea, I understand why they put them off in the weird corners, because they're like, there's not going to be enough people to justify putting this where it's going to keep people from coming into our store. I'm like, okay, well, there's other parking spots, okay, but sure, why not? Plus, we gotta dig up the ground in order to put these charging stations, closer to the store. And I'm like, all right, it's expensive to put those things there. What's the return on investment if you put it a little bit closer to the Denny's?
Just a little closer. I don't need it I don't need it right outside the front door, but could we not put it so it's almost not even in the parking lot anymore?
Yeah. It's in another parking lot.
Yeah.
That said, again, I live in the Bay Area, so it's EV, but eventually everyone's going to be at the Bay Area, and those charging stations, they're all busy. All the charging stations I go to, I'm like, oh, this one's got someone here. Got to wait a few minutes. Oh, it would sure be nice if I was closer to something. So yeah, eventually these charging stations, they need to, as you replace them. I just feel like if I had a taco truck, I'd just be hanging out at charging stations all day.
Taco truck. Is that going to be your side?
I found an EVgo / Tesla charging location. That's like 20 minutes from my house, but there's a pizza place. They have pizza slices. You get pizza by the slice. And I actually asked the owner, I'm like, so is this better? Oh, he's like, yeah, when we opened this, we didn't think there was going to be charging here. And now people come over and they're like you, and they're like, I guess while I'm here, I mean, I might as well get a slice of pizza.
Right? You're like,
sit outside, and you can see your car, and you see all the people pulling up, and you're like, oh, all right, I'm just going to charge up. What did I have at the time?
I had a idea. If you have a food truck and it's like a holiday travel time, you should just park by a charging station, like any kind of chargers, and that are along a busy route. You'll have people coming in. That's a brilliant idea. Everyone should be doing that.
Yeah.
Especially the busy chargers where you're like, oh, I don't want to go to what if I go to the fast food and get food and I lose, and now the spot's filled?
Well, my local EA station, there's it's right next to Popeyes, Burger King, and
Popeyes.
and a
That's
Taco Bell.
dangerous. The Popeyes is dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be careful, kids.
Yeah.
Louisiana
fast. On Friday, I went over to Rivian's Tech Center here in Plymouth, Michigan, and we got a deep dive on the updates to the R1, and we also got an up close look at the R2 and the R3. And the R2, wow, it is really roomy. I was shocked at how much backseat room there is in the R2. It's only a 2-row SUV as opposed to a 3-row R1S. I think that one, when that one arrives in 2026, I think that one's going to be really popular with a lot of people.
Oh yeah, everyone wants the R3, but the R2 is going to be the one that they sell.
It's going to be the sweet spot. Yep.
Yeah. But we learn more about the R1 updates. Among the things that they changed in there, so they got rid of, when they originally launched the quad motor R1s, they used 4 motors sourced from Bosch, and those motors were quite expensive. And they were already developing their own in-house motor design, which is what they launched when they launched the dual motor. Now with this update, they've gotten rid of the Bosch motors altogether. And so now they're offering 2, 3, and 4 motor versions of the R1T and R1S, all using their in-house motors. And that the new quad motor is 1,025 horsepower and 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, which is just stupid.
How powerful is it? It's stupid. How fast?
It's stupid fast.
It's stupid
because we get to drive the dual motor, which is a mere 600 horsepower, and that is
forget it.
more than fast enough that for what anybody needs. That's definitely the even that is on the verge of too fast. But one of the things that they changed, in addition to the motors, they changed the entire electrical architecture of this thing. And so they went, previously the R1s had 16 electronic control units around the vehicle. Now they have 5, including one primary one for the infotainment and the chassis controls. And then 3 zone controllers that handle some of the body functions like mirrors and seats and lights and power distribution, and then the battery management system. So they went from 16 computers to 5. And in the process, they also eliminated a lot of wiring. They took 1.6 miles of copper wire out of the R1. Wow. And the display, they had this ball of copper wire that represented, what they took out of the car. It weighed 46 pounds. So they took 46 pounds of copper out of this thing. Yeah. So some pretty impressive changes to this thing. Makes it slightly more efficient than it was before. Not a whole lot more. It has a few miles more range. But the big thing for Rivian is it should be significantly reducing their costs. They're not saying how much, but the cost of building the R1 should, I'm guessing, is probably going to go down by at least $10,000.
Which is huge.
Yeah. So they might even get close to break even and maybe even profitable on some of those 1,000 horsepower versions that sell for over $100,000.
Wow.
But so the new R1s are available now, and you can get it with 1.6 miles less copper.
1.6 miles. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What if he asked for, can I just get the copper? Like, just a big wad of copper, please?
Is that the picture you have, the giant twine-looking ball of, is that all the copper? There's this picture, the giant ball. He has all these photos, giant ball of copper.
1.6 miles of copper wire.
I don't know.
If you took that and unraveled the whole thing, it'd be 1.6 miles long. Yeah. That's a lot of copper.
It is a lot of copper.
Yeah. And then last item, I think last week we talked a little bit about the Ford Super Truck that's running at Pikes Peak this weekend.
Yes.
Our buddy Andre from TFL, he went to Pikes Peak this week and got to spend some time with the lead engineer on that project and and Romain Dumas, who's the driver. And in qualifying yesterday, that truck was like on the qualifying portion, it was like 10 seconds faster than the second fastest vehicle. 1,600 horsepower. The aerodynamics on this thing make 6,000 pounds of downforce. It's just bonkers.
It's pushing you down.
Yeah.
Like the man.
So check out the YouTube link in the show notes. Go check that out. Check out that video. It's pretty wild. Some of the things they changed in that thing. Basically, there's pretty much nothing carried over from an actual production. Like it's sort of
It's like a bolt.
It's sort of vaguely shaped like a pickup truck, but even that would be a stretch.
Yeah, it's very. Yeah.
This is a sort of pickup truck shaped, electric race car.
Yeah, it's sure, call it whatever you want.
Yeah. So that's it for this week. Any other stuff you guys want to talk about?
Nothing else for me. Next week I go to Korea, so hopefully I have something interesting to tell you.
Are you going with Genesis?
I'm going with the Kia folks because the EV9 won the top award for Women's World Car of the Year, and we are going to go present them with their award at the Busan Auto Show. Am I saying that right? BUSAN? Busan, I think. Busan. So we're going to get to do that. Yeah. So it should be an interesting week with Kia. So hopefully some fun Kia stuff to share when I get back.
Maybe they'll let you test drive a prototype EV3.
Ooh, I think that's really, yes, let's hope that. I'm not holding my breath.
I love Korea. All the food in Korea is good. I don't care what they put
it's
in
all
you.
I don't need an explanation if they're putting the food on. Okay, fine. I'm
I love the street food in Seoul. There's
yes,
fantastic street food in Seoul.
Food in Korea is good.
Although we're arriving in Seoul at like 5 o'clock, and the other folks they're like, "Oh, I think I'm just gonna go to bed." I'm like, "What's wrong with you people? We're gonna go out, do something."
Go to bed at 5 o'clock. That seems like a recipe for a disaster.
I know, right? Stay awake.
What you want to do is sleep for about 5 or 6 hours on the plane.
Yeah.
Wake up about 4 hours before you land.
Yeah.
And if you're arriving at 5 o'clock, wake up about 4.5 hours before you land, and then stay up till about 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
That night, and then go to bed. And you should be basically on a Korean schedule at that point.
Yeah, that was my thought process. I'm like, what's with you?
It works for me. It worked great for me when I went to Korea last fall.
Yeah, so that's what I'm planning on going up. If staying awake and going out and doing something, even if I get lost.
Live the time zone you are in.
Exactly. You have to be up
the time zone you're going to.
Yeah.
As soon as you get on the plane, set your watch to that time zone. Like, oh my God, it's 2 a.m. I should go to bed.
I should be asleep by now, zonk. Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be on the plane for probably about 14 hours from Boston?
15. I think it's 15 when I looked at the little,
flying against
so stay up for the first 4 or 5 hours, sleep for about 5, 6 hours, and then get up for 4, and then you'll be good.
So that's the plan.
And then eat some delicious food.
And then eat some delicious food, right?
It will live vicariously through your delicious food.
All right. We'll talk to you all next week.
Bye. Everyone.